Okay, guys, hello. Welcome to the CELPIP TestPrep class. This one we will be covering reading. Last week, if you remember, we covered the first couple of topics within reading, listening for a conversation, and applying a diagram. What we're going to do today is we're going to cover reading for information. Before I get started, can I just check that everybody is here? Is Sarah here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello, and Alan.
Hello.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining me, guys. All right, what we'll do is if we jump through, let's go over the overview of the CELPIP reading test for reading for information. In our last session, as I just mentioned, we covered the reading to apply a diagram section of the speaking test. Today, we will cover reading for information. This section of the test is 10 minutes long, okay? I should point out at this point that if you have any questions at any time, please do let me know. I'm here to help. There may be something you're not unsure of, or maybe there's something that we covered in last week's lesson that's come to your attention and you just maybe want me to clarify a few things. So has anybody got any questions before we get started?
What if I don't understand a word?
Right, okay, no, thank you. That's a great question. That actually comes up quite a lot. We have many of our students who are unfamiliar with certain words in the English language, and it kind of sends them into a little bit of a panic because they spend too much time trying to figure out what that word is. What you can do is try and associate the word within the sentence. So try and figure out what does that word mean in context of the sentence. And using the words around that word, you'll be able to understand what that word potentially means. We're actually going to cover something like that in this session, predominantly words that are associated with Canadian life. So actually, it's great that you've mentioned that because as luck would have it, look at this, understanding words. Okay, so many questions in this test are based on Canadian life. With that in mind, I would like you trying to guess what the following Canadian themed words mean. Do any of you know what the word poutine means?
Yeah.
What does poutine mean?
It's fries with gravies and cheese.
Perfect. Yes, it's kind of like a cuisine, like a local dish that's famous in Canada. You don't really get it anywhere else. So you may get questions that are based around somebody describing poutine, and you might think to yourself, what is poutine? But again, using the words around it, which we'll cover in the next slide, you'll be able to understand that poutine is potentially some sort of food. What about toque? Does anybody know what toque is?
No.
Okay, so perfect. What we'll do is we'll jump into the next couple of slides, and these slides will then provide sentences that use these words. And then using the sentences, we can kind of gauge potentially what these words mean. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first one of the best things about Canada is the poutine. It's so delicious. I get it every time I visit Quebec. Okay, so if you don't know what poutine is, you may think, just on its own, you're like, I have no idea what poutine could mean. But within this sentence, we're able to understand that maybe it's got something to do with food, maybe it's something I eat, because they're using the word delicious. And delicious is something we would use to describe how something would taste. Therefore, we can assume that maybe poutine is food. Similarly, for a term like loony, you might think, what's that? I'm not quite sure what a loony is. Is loony how you describe somebody? Is loony a thing? But in this sentence, the dollar store is awesome because you can find so many different things to buy and they only cost a loony. Okay, so a dollar store implies that everything there is $1. So if everything is $1 and it only costs a loony, maybe a loony is $1. Right? Moving on, we've got the winters in Toronto are very cold. So I would recommend a warm jacket, a pair of gloves, and a toque to keep your head warm. Okay, so Sarah, you had a little bit of difficulty with the term toque. Now with this sentence, and they're describing a jacket and gloves and a toque would keep your head warm. What do we think now toque is?
A hat.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, toque is a hat. It's basically just like a woolly hat, like a knitted hat that you put on your head to keep your head warm. Perfect. So you can see, like, outside of this sentence, the word took, you're like, I have no idea what this could mean. But within the context of a sentence, using the words around it, you can then make a judgment of like, oh, maybe it's something I wear. We have a couple more examples here. Runners is a common phrase that comes up in Canada. And the weather was so nice, so I put my runners on and ran along the seawall. Again, here we can say, oh, runners is something I wear potentially to go for runs or for a jog or for a walk or maybe a hike. Hockey. I know hockey may sound like, oh, I know what hockey is, but I've had one or two students that weren't familiar with hockey or certain terms within the sport. So I love watching the team compete in hockey because it's so competitive and takes a great deal of skill to be good at. So instantly we know, oh, hockey is a sport. It's a competitive sport that people play. And lastly, hydro. This can be a bit tricky, but when people say hydro in Canada, it's in reference to like the bills they pay for their electricity, because a lot of the electricity is generated through these dams and water, so it's referred to as your hydro bill. Again, hydro outside of this sentence would be quite confusing, but within this sentence it makes sense. My hydro bill was higher than usual this month, which wasn't surprising as I had used a fair amount of electricity over the past few weeks. So here we can see, okay, hydro is something that comes in the form of a bill, and it's relating to the amount of electricity that maybe I use throughout the month. Okay, does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Perfect, great. Let's move on. Okay, so we've got here's like the bulk of what a question will face. You have to read for information. So what they'll do is they'll present to you 4 different paragraphs with information in it, and then you need to find the information that is present within these paragraphs, which you know, can be quite daunting.
But I have a question.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So I had the CELPIP exam before, and I have this issue with the reading task. It's too long for me, so it's hard for me to read, like to finish the whole thing within the time limit.
Right, okay. Yeah, thank you for the question. That's another very common fear or issue that many of our CELPIP students face. And the one thing that we recommend that they do, and by the end of our course, they're actually pretty good at doing this, they learn the ability to skim for information. Essentially what that is trying to find words that associate with the question. So for example, if the question was, how are the summers in Toronto? You would look at the paragraph and quickly skim for words that you would associate with summer. So you would look for words like hot or heat or sunshine or warm or beach, things that you're like, oh, that's what I associate with summer. So you skim through it quickly, not reading every word, but just trying to quickly glance at words to see if you can find any words that you would associate with summer. And that's something we'll go over in some lessons that come up to kind of help hone that skill and to make you better at skimming. Here, I've actually got a nice quick technique that can help make the whole thing shorter. So in this instance, we have to try and find the information that says remain calm to avoid potential bear attacks. Okay, so there's 4 paragraphs here, but then there's also an option that maybe it's not present in any of these paragraphs. So again, we don't read every single word. We'll just kind of skim for things that may be relevant to bear attacks. I'll give you guys like a quick 10 to 15 seconds to skim through it. Can you guys find anything that might be a reference to bear attacks in one of these paragraphs?
Paragraph C.
Perfect, yes. So paragraph C is a paragraph that's about human interaction with bears. So we can see, like in big bold letters here, it says, do not run away, right at the bottom of paragraph C. It says there are a few things you could do. First, remain calm, don't panic, and do not run away. Calm behavior is always recommended, as sudden movements and loud noises can agitate the bear and may trigger an attack. Okay, so we can see that within this paragraph, it gives us information to remain calm to avoid potential bear attacks. One thing to note and remember is that you won't necessarily see the question word for word in the paragraph. It will be paraphrased. So there will be words that are similar to attack or potential bear attacks or avoid. So always keep that in mind. So what you can do to help make this process quicker is there's going to be a bunch of questions that say, find this information in the paragraph, find that information in a paragraph. Rather than having you read all the paragraphs, what I would suggest is at the beginning of this task, just spend like 10 to 15 seconds browsing each paragraph and get a sense of what the paragraph is about. And then make a note on your piece of paper as to what paragraph A is about, what B is about, what C is about, and what D is about. And there's the reason we do that is because, let me just jump through. Here we go. Okay, so making a note of the paragraph's overall content will help save you time when you need to look for the information within a paragraph. So for example, paragraph A was about general bear facts. Like if you spend 10 to 15 seconds reading that, you'll see that it's, oh, bears are carnivorous mammals that could be found across the northern hemisphere. They're actually quite agile, they're strong climbers, and they're used in various cultural aspects of human society. B was about a mother bear and her cubs. Again, we can get that by just kind of looking through it and seeing they did some research on caring for their cubs, what mothers do to kind of protect their cubs. In C, as we've already covered, it's about human and bear interactions and what you can do to avoid them. And paragraph D is about bear spray, a particular spray that people use when there's a potential for an attack. So just writing these down at the beginning of the task tells us, okay, if it's a question relating to bear spray, I know I just have to look in paragraph D. I haven't necessarily got to look through A, B, and C to get to D. So that's worth keeping in mind. Each paragraph will be on a very specific section, so you'll know if it's related to bear facts or if they're talking about the mother bear or cubs, then you know to focus just on B. If it's about humans and how they interact with bears, we know we can go straight to paragraph C, and that's going to save you so much time. We've got a couple of examples here. So let's say, for example, the question was, bears will often isolate themselves from humans. Okay, so we already know the question says bears and humans, and we already know that bears and humans is paragraph C. So now we just need to focus on C and see if we can find this information in there. If it's in there, we'll put C. If it's not in there, it could be misleading, then we would put does not appear in this paragraph. Bears can live to be 25 years old. Okay, that sounds like a bear fact. So we would look in paragraph A, and then we would quickly browse to see if we could find the number 25. So if we quickly read, bears are carnivorous mammals, southern hemisphere, they are slow and heavy, agile, strong climbers, they're incredibly powerful, and they're used in cultural aspects of human society. So although this is the section of bear facts, there's no fact there about the bear's age, so that we can now assume that this information isn't found within either of these or any of these paragraphs. So we could put option E does not appear in any paragraph. Any questions so far?